Story of Seasons is the series that started it all, the grandmama of cozy farm sims. And now they are bringing back to life a not so well known title from back when it was still known as Harvest Moon on the DS. Grand Bazaar basically still feels like good old Story of Seasons, except you know how you sell your produce by dropping it in a shipping box? Well, what if you're in charge of selling your produce yourself? Grand Bazaar's big change to the typical Story of Seasons formula is the titular Grand Bazaar, where you can set up shop and peddle your produce. Does this game bring something new to the table? Well, let's find out. The Story of Seasons and Rune Factory series have a formula and they love sticking to it. Amnesiac protagonist. So, like most Story of Seasons, you're a farmer who moves into a town, Zephyr Town. This town has an unused, to some degree run-down farm that you have to bring back to its former glory, or better. Story of Seasons takes it a step further by also having a bazaar that has seen better days, which you also have to restore to its former glory. It's the usual Story of Seasons plot, just with the addition of the bazaar. If you want something grander, Rune Factory is probably where you want to go. Guardians of Azima is pretty cool, check our review of it. While the main story is just the usual fare, a lot of the appeal of the story is in its characters and how you slowly build relationships with the various people of the town. The devs know this, so they always try to make varied characters with differing personalities, ensuring that there's at least one character that you're going to decide is marriage material. Just RIP to whoever fancies an unmarriable townsperson, I guess. Robin from Stardew, anyone? There are 6 men and 6 women who are viable romantic partners. Just like when we reviewed Guardians of Azima, there are no gender restrictions when choosing your partner. Other than the characters, it's also pretty satisfying seeing the bazaar itself grow over time as you draw a bigger crowd, recruit more merchants to set up stalls, making the bazaar a livelier and more prosperous place. Grand Bazaar definitely knows what we want from a cozy farm sim. That warm feeling of coming into a community, being accepted, and becoming part of it, and also helping it grow and flourish. Again, the gameplay is your typical Story of Seasons with some additions that are unique to it. Obviously, we have the titular Bazaar. The Bazaar is held at the end of every week on Saturday, with a review or evaluation of your Bazaar the day after, on a Sunday. Central to the game's gameplay loop is increasing your Bazaar's rank. Every Sunday, the day of your evaluation, you can see your progress. To increase your bazaar's rank, you must increase sales as well as gather more people willing to sell their goods at the bazaar. Sales is pretty self-explanatory. More merchants, on the other hand, come as you increase rank. Every time you increase your bazaar's rank, you will attract merchants who want to set up shop in your bazaar. But they're not gonna do it immediately, as you'd have to fulfill a request before they can start setting up their bazaar stalls. These requests can come in the form of fetch quests or some kind of to-do list where you have to do something like give gifts to X amount of people X amount times, blah blah blah. How do you get goods to sell at the bazaar? Well, this should be familiar to all of the Story of Seasons and Farming Sim in general veterans. You get your goods from a lot of different activities such as foraging, mining, taking care of farm animals, growing crops, fishing, you know, all that good stuff. Furthermore, with the help of the windmills around town, you can process the goods you get from the aforementioned activities to make even more high-value items. Once you have your goods, it's time to open up shop. There are various ways of customizing your shop and all of them affect how you sell your goods. Obviously, having a bigger counter or having more counters will allow you to display more items at once. There are also decorations that you can put on your stall so that you can increase the sales of a certain type of goods. The shop decoration aspect is another great way to augment the feeling of progression in the gameplay loop surrounding the bazaar. The bazaar definitely adds a rhythm to your gameplay. There's usually a little bit of an overwhelming feeling when you're starting a farm sim because of all the things that you can do, or at least this is how it feels like starting Stardew Valley in the present day, with all the stuff that's been added to that one. But the bazaar gives you goals, both long-term and short-term. Obviously, long-term is being the very best like no bazaar ever was, and the short-term is preparing for the bazaar that will come every Saturday. Again, it puts a nice rhythm to the game and gives you something to look forward to every in-game week. But that also has its downsides. For one, there are certain shops that are only open on Bazaar Day, and said shops will have stuff that you will only find there. So you're gonna have to wait a full week just to say, buy a cow or a chicken. That is if you can find time to buy them, because you'll have to run your own stall at the bazaar too. Having a once a week bazaar also means you're only earning money once a week. Of course, there's Miguel, who offers to buy the items that you want to sell, but you definitely would earn more if you waited and sold them at the bazaar instead. Traversal has become a lot more streamlined with the addition of the glider. It's a pretty in-theme way of adding faster travel, as Zephyr Town is already known for its windy weather, so you can ride the winds to your destination. And you'll need to take advantage of this every time because early game has you backtracking a lot. Your inventory is limited at the start, so you'll find yourself going back and forth to either get stuff from storage or drop it off to storage. It also doesn't help that early game storage is pretty limited too. This is remedied later in the game when you buy more inventory spaces, more storage, and that magic box that connects your storage to key areas around town. Like good old-fashioned Story of Seasons, there is no combat. Again, if that's what you're after, Rune Factory is probably up your alley. Not to mention the various other modern indie farm sims that have come out with some kind of dungeon or combat system. But a lack of combat is also a good thing in my opinion, as it gives a little bit more of a cozier vibe compared to being surrounded by flying green demons as you desperately try to find the ladder going to the next level. I think it's a wonderful change of pace to go back to the basics after playing so much of the modern farming sims that have some sort of combat system. As we said earlier, the original game came from the DS era, and so the jump from the DS original to this remake is massive, with characters and animals now brimming with expression thanks to the game's fully committed cartoonish style. Also, look at that cow, it's so round. Portraits for each character are still present, which goes a long way in making interactions feel more personal. On the Switch 2, the colors pop and the world feels lively, even if you're often retracing the same paths over and over. Some blocky textures and the inevitable repetition of scenery do peek through, but the overall presentation is charming enough that it rarely overstays its welcome. There are times when I could feel the Switch 2 struggle to keep a stable frame rate though, but it isn't too big of a stutter or frame rate drop that it becomes a distraction from the gameplay. We also played the game a little bit on handheld mode, and it seemed to play just as well as docked. The sound design does a lot of lifting here, with character voices and little flourishes that make the townsfolk feel more alive than their text boxes alone could manage.
That's all I needed to hear!
Oh, by the way, this is the first Story of Seasons with an actual voiced cast. Isn't that neat? Each area has its own fitting musical touch too. The bright daytime melodies, the softer string arrangements at night, they all work together to lock in that cozy, small town vibe. It's easy to get lost in the routine when the soundtrack so neatly mirrors the flow of your day. However, I can't help but wish the game leaned into full voice acting beyond significant story events and heart events, since even minor festivals could benefit from that extra spark of personality. So, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. It does a lot of things well. It gives you that feeling of community that most people love about these farming sims, making friends, falling in love, participating in town events, and all that. The farming aspect is as you'd expect from a Story of Seasons game. The Bazaar is a great way to put some rhythm and structure to your farming life, giving you something to look forward to and plan your schedule around every week. But it also has some minor annoyances like only being able to buy specific things on Bazaar Day and only being able to sell on Bazaar Day, at least if you want to sell your goods at the best price. But overall, Grand Bazaar provides a pretty relaxing, lose yourself in the game's rhythm kind of gameplay that you'd want in a farming sim. You can get the game for 60 USD on the Switch 2 and 50 USD on the Switch and Steam, which I would say is a fair price for a game that you can potentially spend a lot of hours on. With that being said, we're giving Story of Seasons a solid and respectable 80. But enough about us. What about you? Are you thinking of getting the game? Which Story of Seasons is your favorite? Who are you planning to marry? It's a toss-up between June or Freya for me. Thanks for watching. Like if you liked, Subscribe for more video game reviews and video game related content. This has been Game 8, and we hope to see you in the next video.